There can be beauty in psychosis. Not everything that's real is important, and not everything that's fake is worthless. Sometimes beauty doesn't come from sunsets or symphonies. Sometimes it's found in the cracks and chaos and moments when everything falls apart. And that's what Cyberpunk Edgerunners captures. A world where beauty isn't about perfection, but the bittersweet elegance of losing yourself in a place that never wanted you to begin with. From the very beginning, Night City was never pristine. It thrives on violence, corruption, and crime, swallowing up the dreams of anyone who dares to believe in something better. Our protagonist, David Martinez, isn't an exception to this reality. He wasn't a perfect son or a model citizen. He grew up fighting against a system that he could never escape, lashing out at a world he didn't fully understand, and making life even harder for a struggling mother. Gloria, a woman who loved David with all her heart and sacrificed everything for his future. But David never really gave her the appreciation she deserved while she was alive, instead deciding to rebel and ultimately throwing away what she had died to give him. But here's the thing, in Cyberpunk Edgerunners, beauty doesn't come from a perfect city or a perfect hero. It emerges in a synthetic and unlikely form, psychosis. David's journey begins with a boy desperate to prove his worth in a world that's already written him off. Born into poverty and constantly beaten down by the brutal realities of Night City, David doesn't just want power, he needs it. To survive, you must rise above, even if it means sacrificing what makes you human. And that's where the Sandevistan comes into play. It's a shortcut to strength, a tool that promises the power David has always longed for. But the cost of power is never free. As David becomes increasingly reliant on the Sandevistan and other chrome implants, his mental state deteriorates, mirroring the city itself, and his need for strength morphs into an obsession, pushing him further into a state of psychosis. For David, psychosis is more than just a mental breakdown. It's a method for survival, a way of coping with the trauma that Night City inflicts. Each piece of chrome that David installs is a step further from his humanity, but to him, it's worth it. The psychosis offers him something that the world can't control. It's a perverse form of strength and a way of rising above the powerlessness that he's always known. Through the lens of psychosis, David begins to see a world that is more malleable, more within his reach. Even if the Osaka executives control his life and end up taking it, at least in the moment, David can control how he feels through psychosis. This illusion of control allows him to feel like he's finally in charge, something that he could never achieve in a city built on exploitation and violence. Psychosis isn't just random delusions either. It's the physical manifestation of greed, lust, and desperation that permeates Night City. It is a corruption of the self, a byproduct of a city that thrives on excess. And David's descent into psychosis is an expression of this cycle. David sacrifices all of his time for freedom. He chooses to live fast, knowing that it will end with him dying young. But that's a choice that David gets to make. And in a place like Night City, that's better than what most people can ask for. But unfortunately, David's sacrifice isn't just his time, it's also his sense of self. The more that David embraces the chrome, the more he becomes disconnected from his humanity. Each upgrade, each power he gains erodes his sense of self. But paradoxically, psychosis also offers him a strange kind of freedom. It's the ultimate escape, allowing David to transcend the mortal limitations of his body and the shackles of the city. In his delusions, he can imagine himself as the hero he's always wanted to be. However, it's all a mirage, because psychosis is both his prison and his release, a beautiful illusion that allows him to achieve everything he thought he wanted, at the cost of everything that made him human. Even though cyberpsychosis steals away everything that physically makes David human, it also reveals the real, unfiltered version of him. While the city spent years molding him into a survivor, someone who hides his vulnerability and wears ambition as armor, psychosis pulls back the curtain on his deepest fears, desires, and contradictions. His mind, that used to be a tool for navigating the harshness of Night City, begins to unravel. And in that unraveling, David is forced to confront parts of himself that he's long buried. In his psychosis, we see a young man who isn't just fighting for power, he's fighting for validation, a sense of worth that he's never felt. And this is where David's true self emerges, not in the moments of glory or in the chase of chrome, but in the cracks of his mind, where the power of Chrome no longer matters. He isn't just trying to be someone who's rich and famous, he's desperate to feel like he matters. Psychosis forces him to grapple with who he really is beneath the bravado and obsession for power. And this brutal self-awareness becomes a blessing and a curse, as he finally sees himself as a flawed and broken person, incapable of escaping the very system that shaped him. But when he finally does, it's far too late, and he's far too deep to escape. For David, the Sandevistan is like his drug of choice. It's the main proprietor that drags him so deep. But despite that, he can't let go of it, and it becomes an extension of his own ambition. It's a way to break free of the limitations that Night City has imposed on him. But more than that, it becomes a crutch for his desperation. Night City isn't kind to those without power, and for someone like David, power becomes an obsession. The Sandevistan is his way of proving that he can rise above, that he can protect the people he cares about, and that he can matter in a city that's designed to make people feel disposable. David refuses to accept that he's just another lamb destined for the slaughter. So he begins adding Chrome like there's no tomorrow. But Chrome doesn't give without taking. Each time that David pushes himself further, he sacrifices a piece of who he is. His reliance on the Sandevistan and Chrome as a whole mirrors the broader greed that defines Night City. In this city, power is the only currency that matters, and for many, it's worth more than their sanity. David's spiral into cyberpsychosis isn't just a personal tragedy, it's the natural outcome of living in a world where power is worshipped and humanity is optional. This obsession with power, however, isn't born out of selfishness, it's born out of survival. Night City has taught David that being weak means being crushed, and so he clings to strength at any cost. But even as he becomes stronger, the city's grip on him tightens. The Sandevistan might make him faster, stronger, and more capable, but it also locks him in the city's cycle of destruction. In the chaos of Night City, Lucy is more than just a love interest for David. She's his escape, both literally and physically. She represents a life beyond the crime, greed, and violence that has shaped him. Her dreams of reaching the moon and leaving the city behind are so different from the power-obsessed nightmares that David has been consumed by. Lucy doesn't want to overthrow Osaka or become a legend. She just wants to escape Night City. Because of this, Lucy doesn't just offer David love, but she offers him the possibility of freedom, of a life without the endless hunger for strength that Night City instills in its victims. But unfortunately, David can't take her hand. The city's impact on him runs too deep. Night City didn't just teach him to want power, it taught him to need it. After years of seeing the powerless crushed and discarded, David truly believes that strength is the only way to matter, the only way to protect the people that he loves. And even as Lucy pleads with him to run away, to abandon the path that is destroying him, David can't let go, forcing himself to believe that he is different, that he is the one who can bear the weight of the chrome without losing himself, even as it becomes clear that that weight is too much for him to carry. And this is where the tragedy lies. David is torn between two sides, the life that Lucy offers and the power Night City demands. To embrace Lucy's vision, he has to admit that he's not different, that he's just another victim of the city. But to continue down the path of power is to lose everything that he cares about. And so, in his final moments, David makes the ultimate sacrifice. He chooses power over love, pushing himself to the point of unescapable death and psychosis. The psychosis symbolizes not only the cause of David's death, but also the hollow victory that Night City offers. It's not real power, it's the illusion of power. David's journey is a tragic dance between what he thinks he needs and the reality of what he's losing. And in his final moments, he achieves this dream in the most hollow way possible. Not through strength or love, but through psychosis-induced fantasy. It's a beautiful tragedy where the act of achieving everything he's always thought he wanted only reveals the falseness of his desires. David's journey in Cyberpunk Edge Runners isn't about a boy becoming a legend. It's about a boy who, in seeking power, loses everything that made him human. It's about a world that destroys people not through violence alone, but by making them believe that they have no choice other than to sacrifice themselves for the illusion of strength. In this world, beauty isn't found in perfection, it's found in the raw, bittersweet reality of our imperfections, our desires, our flaws, and our choices that define who we really are. Through David's tragic downfall, Edgerunner shows us that the most beautiful things are often the hardest to face. Sometimes, in the search for meaning, we lose sight of the very thing that gives us value, our humanity. In the end, the beauty of cyberpunk edgerunners lies not in the chrome, the fights, or the triumphs, but in the cracks and the broken pieces that make us whole.